It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. You're listening to us in your neighborhood, from coast to coast and around the world. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joan Herman, author, speaker, and your host. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life brings you interviews with some of the most inspirational and influential people in the world. It's our goal to educate and empower you so you can live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. We have another great show for you today. Joining me is Julie Genovese, author of the book, Nothing Short of Joy. Julie was born a dwarf with degenerative arthritis, and after much heartache and humiliation, she decided to take charge of her life. She found that true happiness must come from within, and she decided that she would stop at nothing short of joy. Julie's been featured on television and radio across the country, including Oprah.com, and she's appeared on stage with internationally renowned author and speaker, Dr. Wayne Dyer. Welcome, Julie. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Joan. Thank you for having me.
Julie, Dr. Northrup, in referring to your book and your life story, she said that your story is eloquent and moving proof that our spirits are always intact and always whole, regardless of how things appear physically. To get a better idea about what Dr. Northrup means in that statement, tell us a little bit about how you were born.
I was born with spondyloepiphyseal dysplasia, which is a really long Latin label for dwarfism. My form of dwarfism was associated with degenerative arthritis. There were a lot of problems with my joints and my spine, and so from the start, I was connected with the medical community. And it was wonderful that I found authors like Christian Northrup and Bernie Siegel who understood the mind-body connection and helped me to understand that the negativity that I had received from the world and the belief that I was disadvantaged and defective was really just a mindset. And it didn't have to do with my actual circumstances. It had to do with the way people were responding to them. And then I took on that same response and became my own worst enemy. I was the one who learned how to impose those limitations on myself, which is what we all are doing in our different ways. Mine happened to be physical issues and an external body that people rejected or humiliated, but ultimately it's all about that internal response. When we discover we're in charge, we can choose our response. We have the ability to, as you know, we change our attitude and everything else begins to change.
You have a brother who was born with the same condition as you?
Mm-hmm. I have 5 older brothers and sisters. The last 2 of us were born with SED. And when my brother was born a year and a half before me, the doctors told my parents, well, it won't happen again because he's just a mutation. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I came along and proved them wrong. They didn't know at the time that it was genetically passed along. And my brother and I, though, within our family, we weren't the support group you'd think we would have been because my parents had decided, they told us years later, they did not want to make our dwarfism an issue, and so they didn't really address it at all. They loved us, they accepted us, but I misinterpreted that silence as shame, that it was a bad thing, and that's why we didn't talk about it. And so over the years, my brother and I we looked at our situations very differently. I went inside and felt it was all my fault, and he sort of lashed out at the world and was angry at everyone and anyone who stared. So it was interesting to see 2 people in very similar circumstances react in very different ways.
Julie, you explained your feelings so eloquently in the book when you were talking about the times that you would drive up to Massachusetts, to Boston, because I'm assuming you were part of a study because this was so rare, and there would be teams of doctors that would come in and they would evaluate you, and you would literally be standing on a table in front of all of these strangers. And if you could just very briefly give our listeners a sense of
what you were going through at that time, because to be honest, it was something I never thought about. We hear about people that are part of studies, but we never put a human face to those people.
Yeah, that was incredibly traumatizing to be in the medical world and to be considered a specimen, really a defect. And the words that they used in describing me, deformed and misaligned, they were describing my physical self, but I felt it was me because we all associate ourselves with our body. And so it didn't occur to them, and hopefully the medical world is changing and has changed over the years, that at that time when there was a convention and they wanted my brother and I because they wanted to study these oddities and nonconformities, and the one day they put me up on a table. I believe it must have been residents, but they all had their white coats on. I assumed they were doctors. And my doctor proceeded to describe me and everything that was wrong. Not a thing about what was good or what was hopeful about my case. It was all what didn't go right and which was abnormal compared to the regular world. And so those labels were devastating. Over the years, I went on to really embrace that as the definition of who I was. In time, it actually it was a catalyst to discover that I was more than my body, to find my spirit, to find the love and joy inside. But at the time, as a child, to be seen through the eyes of these gods of medicine, which were the ultimate authority. My parents sort of were deferential to them. Everyone was. So I thought what they said was truth forever and ever, and that I had no hope. I think that's part of why I'm here, though, is to bring understanding to the medical world as well, because they are learning what they're taught in medical school, to be objective, to be cold in a way.
Right.
And it's just not possible because you cannot disconnect our body from our spirit.
So, Julie, to use your own language, at this point you had already decided that you were defective, and now all these great minds were validating what you already knew on the inside.
Yeah, exactly.
So now you are going out into the world, and you have to go to school and you have to spend time with children who were brutal to you. And then you go on to college. And I love the story about Josh, because Josh liked you and you were your own worst enemy at that time.
I totally was.
What happened with that? You were the one that decided that you weren't good enough for Josh.
That's right. It's funny because I think our spirit and our higher self knows that we're good enough. And so it made me, of course, want to be in love and want to find a partner and want to be adored. But as soon as this boy who I had such a crush on and we were friends, as soon as he showed interest, I just was nearly incapacitated because my negative view of myself couldn't believe what he saw. And I also feared that if he saw my true self, which I thought at the time was very negative and very sad and very angry, that he would then reject me. So when he showed a little bit of interest, I basically pushed him away and told him of someone else I knew who had a crush on him. Leveled myself. I was miserable after I did it. They did end up dating for a long time. That story is really an interesting one because so many people have done that and continue to do that without realizing that they don't want to be rejected, so they reject first. And then we end up getting what we expect, which is not the love we really deserve.
After Josh, you then started to change your way of living. You changed your diet and you started to study your feelings from within. How did this come about? What made you take that path?
That's a good question. I think I became so disconnected from myself and so miserable about my life. I really was asking for help. And I ended up moving to Boston, of all places, which was where I used to be studied by the doctors and had to go for my evaluations, and ended up moving back there. And it was a beautiful full circle because Boston became the place of a huge awakening for me. I found this little bookstore, and it was full of books on personal growth and spirituality and inspiration, and it was completely what I needed to hear, was that my joy and my peace was not going to be based on my circumstances or, in my case, on my body. it was going to be based on my attitude, on my own response to these things, on ferreting out the negativity that I'd adopted as real, and discovering that I had a choice. I could actually choose a path toward joy instead of the one I had chose, which was believing what my pack said about me, which was believing what the medical world said when they really didn't know. Mm-hmm. They were studying me. They were looking for answers, but they were sort of projecting onto me that this was definitely a bad thing, that nothing good could come of it, and I've found the opposite, that all sorts of gifts come as a result of our struggles. You know, the greater the tribulation, the greater the triumph, and I think that's why we go through the ringer, is for that achievement, that sense of who we really are, what is our strength, why are we here, do we have a purpose, is there something beyond the pain? And when I found there was, that empowerment was worth the journey.
And one of the most interesting things that I found in your story, and I can totally relate to this, is that every time you would realize that, you know, that pretty popular girl, that she was just as insecure as the rest of us.
Exactly.
You know, I think that's an important lesson that everyone really needs to learn, that it doesn't matter what you look like, what you've accomplished, if you're wealthy, if you're not. Mm-hmm. We all have insecurities, and we all have things that we admire in other people, and we wish that we could be. So, you know, everyone really is on a level playing field, but we just don't see it.
Yes. Yeah, I thought I was so disadvantaged because physically I was different. But in the end, the fact that I couldn't hide my differences really asked me to go inside. It asked more of me initially, whereas my friends, the one who was the prom queen, and everyone admired her, and she was smart, and she was friendly, and she just seemed to have everything going for her, I find out years later that she had just as many, if not more, insecurities than I did. She was often attacked by who she thought were her closest friends because they were all vying for that highest spot of, you know, the most popular, the prettiest. And so she didn't feel she had anyone to rely on, and she didn't feel that ultimately people knew who she was on the inside because they judged, even though it was positive, they were still judging her by her body, by her, or the jocks, by their physical ability. And without that, who were they? And it took them a long time to find who they were and did they love and respect who that person was, when we're also used to listening to how other people talk about us or how they see us instead of going inside and finding that ultimate acceptance and love and wisdom within.
Julie, tell us about your personal life. Are you married, children?
Yes, I found a wonderful husband, and it was really after probably the hardest year in my life. I had had 2 hips replaced and 2 knees replaced, and that hardship, which flung me back into my fears about the medical world and my feeling of weakness and that I was disadvantaged, and all of that catapulted me then forward into seeing more of my strengths and more of why I was here, the power I did have to make choices, and I began to believe I had value and that I could be in love and I could find that partnership. And I met Bill. Actually, he was friends with 2 of my friends, and for over 10 years, and I'd never met him. We were both volunteering at a holistic health fair, and there was an immediate something, which of course initially I doubted because I thought, well, I've never been right before. Why would I be right this time? But the longer we talked and we got to know each other, you know, we are a great match. We have 2 boys who teach me all sorts of things about myself, and I just am amazed at how life has come around for me because I realized and saw that I did not believe in myself, and that we can work on that. We can actually change that. It's not reality. It's just what we've been taught. That's it. It's negative programming, and any programming can be undone, and we can insert more joyful programming.
Dr. Wayne Dyer wrote about your book that it is a masterpiece that will take you out of your comfort zone and into a magical world of joy. Do you believe that we're uncomfortable with joy?
Yeah, sometimes it looks that way only because it's habit, and habit is familiar, and habit feels like it's safe. It's like the old saying about the caged bird. that's all we know. We know those bars, we know how they look, we know how they feel, and there's a fear of moving out of it. So I don't think we prefer it, but I think because it feels safe that we choose it. And we can choose differently, because as soon as it becomes too uncomfortable, and for me, I just was sick and tired of being angry all the time and fighting and lashing out at the world. Instead of the truth was I was fighting myself. I was lashing out at me because I was the one betraying myself. I had agreed with the doctors. I had agreed with the bullies. I'd agreed with the strangers who stared and laughed at me, even though it had been grating against the truth of who I am. And I think our emotions let us know when we're not looking at ourselves the way our soul would look at us, the way the God that we pray to would understand us to be as love, as perfect, just fine, even with all our mistakes and missteps, that we still have this great potential, and we're here to find it and share it and be it.
Julie, where can our listeners go to get more information about you and your work?
My website is nothingshortofjoy.com. I'm also, I blog on the Huffington Post, so you can search Julie Genovese at the Huffington Post.
Julie, in 30 seconds or less, what would you like our listeners to walk away from this interview with? What do you want them to remember?
That we all spend a lot of time screaming at the rain, but truly, the storm is inside of us, and that's actually good news, because we can calm that with all sorts of new habits and new practices, and there are people out there and mentors that can help us keep to those practices and those habits that are going to bring out the truth of ourselves, which is peace and joy.
Julie, thank you so much. The book is Nothing Short of Joy by Julie Genovese. We'll be right back.
It's time for Medical Minutes. Joining me today is Marcelle Pick, the co-founder of Women to Women and the author of The Core Balanced Diet and Are You Tired and Wired? Are You Tired and Wired focuses on adrenal dysfunction and the role it plays in our overall health. Marcelle is a nurse practitioner, and she served as medical advisor to Healthy Living magazine. Hi, Marcelle. Thanks for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Marcelle, in your book, Are You Tired and Wired? You focus on adrenal dysfunction and the havoc that it plays on our health. Before we get into that, tell us a little bit about our adrenal glands. Where are they located, and what is their purpose?
Our adrenal glands are two small, almost walnut-sized glands that sit on top of our kidneys, and they're responsible for helping us deal with day-to-day stressors. And if we don't have them, we actually would die without them. We have to have cortisol to live our lives. The problem is that too many of us have those poor adrenals having to work overtime because of the tremendous amount of stress that we have in our lives now.
When our adrenals aren't functioning properly, there is a long list of effects and problems that can happen to us. Can you tell us a little bit about what some of these are?
Sure. People that fall asleep in mid-afternoon, people that are being curtailed by feeling too tired to do activities. The unfortunate part is that people feel really exhausted in the morning. They feel like they have to have caffeine to wake up for the day. Their thinking is really foggy. They become much more susceptible to having allergies and other infections. They are just exhausted. The big thing that I see in my office is that women start gaining weight around their middle and their abdomen, and they can't get the weight off, and they're incredibly frustrated even though they're exercising and they are changing their diet. They can't get the weight down. So there's many, many symptoms that people have, and they're frustrated because they'll have a lot of blood tests, and that's crucial for anybody. They always need to make sure it's not thyroid or another serious health complication, anemia, and things like that. And when all those tests are negative, they're frustrated because they're told, well, maybe you're depressed, or perhaps it's just getting older, and I'm here to tell you that that's absolutely not the case, that many women in their 70s, 80s, 90s are feeling fantastic as long as they're taking really good care of themselves. It also causes huge problems with blood sugar dysregulation. It causes hormonal fluctuations, tremendous hormonal fluctuations. It can actually change thyroid function, and GI symptoms can pursue as well and causes immune issues as well. So it's pretty significant. If it's an ongoing issue for a long period of time, women are just absolutely what I call bone tired and just so tired they can't get out in the bed in the morning.
What happens? Is there a test that we can have? Is there blood
There
work?
is actually a test, and it's actually the gold standard that we use in medicine. It's a saliva profile looking at cortisol levels, at 7 in the morning, noon, afternoon, and evening. Now, this is not for people that were suspicious that they can barely get out of bed and they can't stand up. That's somebody who would need to be evaluated for, Addison's disease or Cushing's syndrome, which is extremely high levels. The good news is it's very rare in our culture. So I'm not talking about those people, but I'm talking about people that are kind of like you and me and everybody else. We can do a saliva profile. So we actually test them at 7 in the morning, noon, 4 in the afternoon, and around 10 at night. And then we look at those levels because cortisol is what we call a circadian. So it's very high normally in the morning and low at night, the opposite of melatonin. Melatonin gets high at night and low in the morning. And we want to see those values because if it's high, you have energy when you get up. You're able to think more clearly. You don't have those hormones that are really kind of in huge chaos. And then you're able to have more stable moods throughout your menstrual cycle or when you're going into menopause. So it's crucial that those numbers be normal. And we can see variations on that theme as people become more and more stressed and the adrenals become more and more what I call compromised.
What happens to a woman who goes to a doctor and is not getting the type of testing that she needs done? What should she tell this doctor?
What she should tell this doctor is, I'm not, it's not just because I'm middle-aged or I'm not depressed, and advocate for herself. And if that still doesn't work, then they may want to find what I call an integrated practitioner or what I am, which is a functional medicine practitioner, to have somebody really listen to their symptoms. We need to have people that are listening to us because women do know their bodies. And if it's not working in the way that it did, something's intervening in a way that's preventing it from do so.
And Marcel, to this point, we've been speaking about women, but does adrenal dysfunction for men as well?
It does. And the truth is that many of us are burning the candle on both ends, especially as we've had this huge change in our technological system. We are now getting up looking on the computer. We're then taking the kids or doing our job, or we're, entering menopause, or the men are, busy doing many things. They then are doing their work. Then they come home. They're still on the computer or their iPad or their iPhone or their BlackBerry. We don't ever shut off. And, 150 years ago, we had this quiet time at night. It got dark. We didn't really have electricity. We might have a candle, but it's very relaxing. Now we have everything that keeps us alert and awake, and it's not in harmony with the physiology of our body. Now, that doesn't mean we have to go back 150 years. It just means that we do need to be mindful. We need balance. We need to go outside. We need to breathe. We need to do types of exercise. We need to be mindful of the quality of the food that we're eating. All those things can help return us to a sense of balance so that we don't feel like we're 45, 50, 65 and deplete.
Marcel, how can we treat and reverse this condition?
Well, the first thing that I recommend is that people be mindful that they need to have a diet that really supports good nutrition. So staying away from sugar, artificial colors, sweeteners, dyes, and they decrease carbohydrates. And in addition to that, it's finding ways that you can have relaxation every single day. It might just be that one thing that you start with is just breathing, that you have signs on your phone to just take a deep breath a couple of times a day. It might mean that you go out with girlfriends twice a week. It might mean that you turn your computers and everything electronic off. I call it an electronic Sabbath twice a week. So that when you come home, you truly are home, that you change your clothes, so you change out of the work environment and get into clothes. Maybe it's taking a bath, maybe it's writing in a journal, but it's doing something every single day that's consciously supporting adrenals and using nutrients, because some people are so tired that we need to add nutrients in to really help that adaptogenic response of the body. And then taking a really good quality multivitamin with calcium, magnesium, fish oil, and the multi in it on a daily basis, again, to support the physiology of the body as you begin to make the shifts that are lifestyle-oriented to help decrease that stress.
Marcel, thank you, and I look forward to having the opportunity to talk to you again.
Absolutely. I'll be delighted to do it. Thanks so much.
We'll be right back.
How well are you handling your stress? Do you know what your cortisol level is? I am Dr. Lynn Corrigan, an anti-aging and regenerative medicine physician at the Active Center for Health and Wellness in Hackensack, New Jersey. Cortisol is the only hormone in your body that increases with age. It is known as the stress hormone because of its involvement in the stress response. Cortisol comes from the adrenal glands and is secreted when you are stressed. It is part of the fight or flight response and helps you to respond in a crisis. The problem is that many people are stressed all of the time and have difficulty reducing their stress. High cortisol levels are associated with high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and high cholesterol. Also with fatigue, irritability, night sweats, and difficulty sleeping. Low cortisol can also develop after a long period of stress. Low cortisol is associated with fatigue, digestive problems, increased menopausal symptoms, and poor athletic performance. We need cortisol and we can't get away from stress, so we need to manage it. The most important thing you can do for stress is to manage your time and learn to say no kindly. Exercise is also very important and has been shown to lower cortisol. A physician trained in anti-aging medicine can measure your cortisol and help you manage it. For more information, call 201-487-4600 or visit us on the web at theactivecenter.com. I am Dr. Lynn Corrigan.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that this information is for educational purposes only and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, you can visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read the digital magazine, take part in the book club, sign up for the mailing list, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.